I never imagined a single night could shatter the carefully built life I had. But that night, after the work party where I lost all control, everything changed. I was drunk, vulnerable, and alone, or so I thought. Then Lennox, my stepson, found me. What happened next was unthinkable, and yet it felt inevitable. I still feel the weight of that night every day. Thank you so much to all my new and returning viewers for being here. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so now. Your support fuels this channel and keeps me going. After hearing this story, I hope you will share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us dive into the raw truth, no holding back. The night air was thick and heavy as I fumbled with my keys, barely able to focus on the lock. My legs wobbled beneath me, and my breath came in uneven gasps. The champagne and cocktails from the work party were coursing through my veins like wildfire. I was intoxicated in every sense, body, mind, and soul. My crimson dress clung to me, damp with sweat and city humidity, outlining curves I usually kept hidden from the world. Tonight was supposed to be a release, a celebration with colleagues. Instead, it was the beginning of my undoing. I finally managed to push open the door and stumbled inside, the marble floor cold beneath my bare feet. The quiet of the house was a stark contrast to the chaos inside me. My heart hammered erratically as I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself. I heard footsteps, low, deliberate, and, before I could gather my wits, Lennox appeared. He stood in the shadows of the foyer, his presence both comforting and dangerous. Lennox was a man in his early 20s, tall with sharp features that mirrored his father's but softened by a gentle kindness I had only glimpsed in rare moments. His dark eyes locked onto mine, full of concern and something unspoken, something deeper. "Zara, are you okay?" His voice was calm, steady, a lifeline in my storm. I wanted to shake my head, to tell him I was fine, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I let myself lean into him, grateful for the solid warmth of his arms as they wrapped around my waist. His hands pressed firmly, steadying me as I swayed, barely able to stand. The heat from his touch burned through the thin fabric of my dress, igniting a confusing flame inside me. I wanted to push him away, to remind myself of the boundaries we must never cross, but I did not. Instead, I melted against him, feeling the tension coil tighter with every heartbeat. Lennox's breath was warm against my neck as he guided me away from the dangerous staircase, his fingers trailing over my skin in ways that made my breath hitch. Every step to my bedroom was a blur. The softness of the carpet underfoot, the scent of his cologne mingling with the faint trace of alcohol on my skin, it all overwhelmed me. When we reached the sanctuary of my room, my knees buckled, and I sank onto the edge of the bed. Lennox knelt before me, his hands moving to ease the straps of my heels. The simple act felt intimate, laden with electricity. I caught his gaze as he looked up, eyes searching mine, questioning, hesitant. My hand found his wrist, gripping it as if to anchor myself in this moment. "Stay," I whispered, the word barely audible but heavy with meaning. For a moment, I thought he might, but then he stood, slipping away with a quiet, "You should rest." His voice was low but firm, a reminder of the impossible line we both knew we were close to crossing. The night stretched on, but sleep eluded me. Wrapped in the cool silk sheets, I was consumed by the memory of his touch, the way his hands felt against my skin, the way his presence filled the room. Desire and guilt warred inside me, tangled and indistinguishable. Morning brought no relief. The soft light filtering through the curtains illuminated the exhaustion etched on my face. In the bathroom, the warm water washed away the sticky residue of the night, but not the weight on my conscience. Every droplet traced a silent confession I could not voice. Downstairs, the house was quiet except for the familiar sounds of the coffee machine. I busied myself with breakfast, hoping to restore some semblance of normalcy. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sizzle of poached eggs filled the kitchen, but the mundane routine only underscored the tension that hung thick between me and Lennox when he finally appeared. He entered without a word, his eyes briefly meeting mine before dropping to the plate before him. The silence was deafening. We ate like strangers, each bite a fragile step in a dance neither of us wanted but both knew we had to perform. Finally, I broke the silence, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We need to talk about last night." His eyes lifted, guarded but resigned. "I know," he said simply. The conversation that followed was heavy, unspoken truths hanging in the air. We skirted around what had happened, each afraid to fully confront the line we had crossed. Yet, the tension simmered, electric and undeniable. There was a moment when I caught him staring, eyes darkened with a mix of confusion, longing and guilt. I wondered if he felt the same pull I did, the impossible attraction that threatened to consume us both. But reality clawed its way back with the morning light. He was my stepson. I was his stepmother. Family, trust, everything we had was at stake. Still, the fire had been lit. The unthinkable had happened, and nothing would ever be the same again. If you are still here, thank you for listening to my story. Please share your thoughts below, and if you have not already, hit that subscribe button to join me for the next chapter. Your support means everything. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft patterns across the room. But the brightness was a cruel contrast to the darkness that settled heavily in my chest. I woke with a pounding headache, my skin clammy and sore from the night before. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me like a stone, each breath a reminder of the boundary I had crossed with Lennox. I lay still for a long moment, eyes fixed on the ceiling, replaying every touch, every breath, every whispered word that had shattered my world. Guilt was immediate and suffocating, mingling with an ache that was something more complex: desire, confusion, and a haunting sense of inevitability. How could a night of drunken weakness become the catalyst for something so consuming? I knew the answer. I had been searching for something, even if I did not fully understand what it was. Lennox was distant that morning, moving through the house with a quiet tension. He avoided my gaze, but when our eyes did meet, there was a flicker of something unspoken, a shared secret that neither of us was prepared to face. His usual ease had been replaced by a careful restraint, as though he were walking a tightrope between his feelings and his conscience. At breakfast, the atmosphere was taut with unspoken words. My spouse Matthew arrived with his usual energetic stride, a man whose presence once filled our home with warmth and laughter. Now, his sharp eyes and quick smiles felt like a spotlight searching for cracks in our fragile facade. He greeted us both, oblivious to the undercurrent that threatened to engulf us all. I forced myself to smile, to play the part of the composed wife, even as the turmoil inside me churned wildly. Matthew chatted about his day ahead, asking about the children's plans, about work, about anything but the elephant in the room. Lennox nodded politely, his jaw tight, hands clenched around his coffee mug. The normalcy was unbearable. Later, as Matthew left for a meeting, the tension between Lennox and me became impossible to ignore. We found ourselves alone in the living room, the silence filled with 1,000 unsaid things. I caught his eye as he reached for a book, his fingers trembling slightly. The familiar warmth I had felt the night before returned in an instant, wrapping around me like a second skin. His glance held a promise, a warning, and something dangerously tender all at once. I wanted to reach for him, to feel his hands again, but reason screamed that this was a path with no return. Still, the attraction simmered beneath the surface, manifesting in stolen glances and subtle touches. A brush of his hand as he handed me a glass of water, a lingering look as he passed by. The space between us crackled with unspoken desire, a fire that neither dared to feed openly. In the quiet moments, I found myself drawn to him in ways I could not explain or justify. The forbidden thrill was intoxicating, a dark current pulling me deeper into a world I knew I should flee from. One afternoon I sat in the kitchen preparing dinner when Lennox appeared behind me. His presence was sudden but not unwelcome. The scent of his cologne was stronger than usual, mixing with the aroma of garlic and herbs. His hands brushed against mine as he reached for a knife, and I felt a shiver ripple through my body. Our eyes met in the reflection of the window, and for a heartbeat the room seemed to shrink until nothing existed but the tension between us. The way his gaze softened, The slight parting of his lips, the subtle flush on his cheeks, all of it spoke volumes louder than any words could. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus on the chopping board before me. Yet, the heat blossomed in my chest, a painful, beautiful reminder of the dangerous line we were skating. Days passed in this fragile dance of denial and temptation, each interaction charged with electricity. I found myself craving Lennox's presence even as I feared the consequences of that craving. Our conversations became more meaningful, laced with layered meanings and hesitant confessions. Beneath the surface, however, another layer of tension began to unravel. One evening, as the family gathered for a casual dinner, I noticed the subtle shift in Lennox's demeanor. He was quieter than usual, distracted, eyes flicking nervously toward Matthew as he laughed at a joke that landed flat. There was a shadow in Lennox's gaze, a secret lurking just out of reach. After the others had left the table, I pulled Lennox aside. "What is going on with you?" I asked softly, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, jaw clenched, before admitting, "There is something you need to know, Zara. Something I have been hiding." My heart skipped a beat. The secret he carried could unravel everything we were trying to hold together, the fragile balance of family, trust, and the dangerous bond that had formed between us. He lowered his voice further. "It is about Matthew. Something from the past. Something he has not told you." The weight of those words crushed me. Fear and curiosity collided in a fierce storm inside my mind. What had Matthew hidden? How long had Lennox known? And what would it mean for all of us if the truth came to light? As Lennox spoke, the room seemed to grow colder, shadows stretching longer, mirroring the darkness creeping into our lives. The secret was a ticking time bomb, ready to explode and destroy everything in its path. Despite the threat looming over us, the magnetic pull between Lennox and me only grew stronger. That night, as I lay awake, I found myself replaying the subtle moments of connection, the brush of his hand, the intensity of his gaze, the quiet promise of forbidden desire. The danger was undeniable, yet so was the longing. I knew that whatever path we chose, there would be no turning back. The secret he carried, the truth about Matthew, and our own tangled emotions were threads weaving a complex tapestry that threatened to bind us all in a web of deception and heartbreak. The shadows of our past and present were closing in, and I was caught between fear and desire, betrayal and love. I wondered, not for the first time, how much more I could endure before everything came crashing down. The walls of our home seemed to shrink with every heavy step Matthew took as he paced the living room. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks was now a roaring blaze, impossible to contain or ignore. His eyes, once warm and steady, were now sharp with suspicion and pain, eyes that looked at me as though I were a stranger, a betrayer. I felt exposed, raw, and utterly broken beneath his gaze. Matthew's discovery was not sudden. It had crept up slowly, piece by piece. The unexplained phone messages, the stolen glances Lennox and I tried desperately to mask, the faint but unmistakable scent of cologne that was not Matthew's blank. Each small sign added to the storm raging in his heart, and eventually, the dam broke. That night, the three of us sat in the cold silence of the dining room, a place that once held laughter and warmth. Now, it held the weight of our secrets, and the unbearable truth we had tried to bury. Matthew's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Zara, Lennox, this has to stop. I see it in every look, every hesitation. Tell me everything, no more lies." His tone was hard but cracked beneath the strain of betrayal. I swallowed the lump in my throat, heart pounding with shame and dread. "Matthew, I never wanted to hurt you. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake." My voice shook as the tears I had fought to hold back spilled over. Lennox reached out, his hand brushing against Manith's touch, electrifying, forbidden. He spoke quietly but firmly. "Dad, I am sorry. This was never meant to happen between us. We were weak, and now we must face what we have done." Matthew's eyes flashed with a storm of emotions, anger, heartbreak, disbelief. "How could you? My wife, my son, this house, this family, everything. How did it come to this?" I wanted to explain, to scream that it was not love, but a desperate moment born of loneliness and confusion. But the words felt hollow. Instead, I let the tears fall, silent apologies spilling through sobs. The confrontation marked a fracture too deep to heal overnight. Days turned into weeks filled with cold nods and strained silences. Matthew became a ghost in his own home, retreating to his study or long walks, leaving Lennox and me to navigate the wreckage we had created. Yet even in the ruins of our broken family, the forbidden bond between Lennox and me grew more tangled. Every accidental brush of skin, every stolen glance was laced with longing and regret. The risk only fueled the fire between us. One night, after Matthew had fallen into an exhausted sleep, Lennox found me in the quiet of the kitchen. The house was dark except for the soft glow of the fridge light, casting shadows that danced on the walls. He approached slowly, a mixture of hesitation and yearning in his eyes. Our breaths mingled in the cool air as he reached for my hand, his touch a lifeline and a reminder of the dangerous path we walked. Without words, he pulled me close, his body pressing against mine with a desperate hunger. His lips found mine in a kiss both tender and urgent, a silent confession of all the passion and guilt we carried. My hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, even as my mind screamed for caution. The warmth of his skin against mine, the steady beat of his heart, drowned out the chaos of our fractured world. Clothes became obstacles to be shed, a physical shedding of the walls we had built around our feelings. Our bodies moved together in a raw dance of desire and regret. Each touch a plea for forgiveness. Each kiss a momentary escape from reality. Yet beneath the intensity, there was an undeniable tenderness, a fragile connection forged in the fire of our mistakes. It was both a curse and a comfort. As dawn crept through the curtains, we lay entwined in the aftermath, the silence filled with unspoken promises and looming consequences. The next day was a cruel reminder that passion could not erase the pain we caused. Matthew's absence was a wound that neither Lennox nor I could ignore. The guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. How could I reconcile the woman I wanted to be with the one who had fallen so far? In the days that followed, conversations became battles. Matthew confronted us with raw pain, his voice breaking as he demanded answers. Lennox tried to bridge the gap with honest words, but the damage was deep, and forgiveness seemed a distant dream. One afternoon I stood alone in the empty living room, the silence pressing against me like a physical weight. I questioned every choice, every moment that led to this shattering reckoning. The cost of our actions stretched far beyond us threatening the trust and love of an entire family. Yet, amid the wreckage, a small spark of hope flickered. Lennox and I, though caught in a storm of emotions, clung to each other with fierce loyalty. Our connection, as destructive as it was also a source of strength. In his arms I found a refuge from the world's judgment and my own remorse. But the path forward was uncertain, fraught with impossible choices and devastating consequences. Could love born of betrayal ever find redemption? Or were we destined to be consumed by the darkness we had unleashed? In the quiet moments before sleep, I wrestled with these questions. Love, guilt, and heartbreak were woven together in a painful tapestry that would shape the rest of my life. The house no longer felt like home, but a reminder of the price we paid for crossing forbidden lines. I did not know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty: nothing would ever be the same again.